Tenderhearted, the podcast for those of us who struggle with being extra sensitive in a less than sensitive world. This is your host, Amy Kelso. I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and advocate for anyone who is tenderhearted or cares about someone who is. Hello and welcome to the Tenderhearted Podcast. I am your host, Amy Kelso, and I am glad to be with you here again. I will be honest, I have been putting off this podcast. There's been a lot going on for me emotionally, mentally, in my head, dealing with some things, and so it's been hard to want to share my thoughts about stuff with the whole world when right now I'm not quite sure exactly what my thoughts are on a lot of things. But I'm here because I made this promise that I was going to be here every week for Tenderhearted Tuesday, and so here I am, and we're going to go ahead and jump in anyway. Today's topic is going to be about a subject that's a kind of a difficult one to talk about, but I think it's something that at least at some point in the life of every tender heart we struggle with, and that is loneliness. Now, I just want to first of all state for the record, whenever I'm talking about things that happen to a tender heart, I am basically basing it on what I've experienced and what I've observed in others. Doesn't mean that every tender heart goes through these things, but from what I've noticed, these seem to be common patterns and at least something to consider. So, with that said, let's talk about how loneliness can show up in the life of a tender heart. So part of the joy and the wonderful thing about being a tender heart is that you see the world differently from most people. You notice things that other people miss. You especially pick up on emotions of other people. You can see what people are going through, but also you're just different from other people. And that is a wonderful trait, and it is one of those things I think that there's a reason for that. I think that we need our tender heart who see things different to help the rest of the world maybe see things in a different light, right? There are purposes and reasons for that, but it doesn't negate the fact that because you are different, it is often hard for you to find friends, people to be with, people who understand you. And I know, at least for me, I struggled with that all my life. Literally, I remember in third grade, my mom was so excited because I finally had a friend, a real friend, which was wonderful. I had a friend in third grade, and then she moved away. And I've had other friends since then, don't get me wrong, but I've never really felt that I had the friend that was close enough that I could be 100% myself. And so even though I have great friends throughout my life, I've had great friends, ones that I can talk to, it's never felt like I could totally be me, even with the best friends that I've had. Because I think we learn, unfortunately, in our life that because we're different, because we're a little odd, people are going to accept us the way we are. So we learn to do what in psychological terms is called masking, where we do very good at studying the people around us, looking at how they interact, and learn how to play the part to fit into that world. And I don't think a lot of us even realize just how much we mask unless we kind of step back and go, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? For me, this kind of goes with my anxiety. We talked about that in another episode, where I didn't even realize the thoughts that were going on in my head every time I interact with someone, because it became such second nature to be like, okay, well, if I do this, they'll act this, but if I do this, maybe they'll think this, and I go through these steps with everything I do, interacting with someone about how they're going to take it. What if I say it this way? What if I don't? Which, side note, I think is part of why I prefer to write my thoughts down than to speak them, because then I can go through all of that in the time I need, and people aren't like, why is she suddenly silent for 5 minutes? Well, I'm considering how to talk. So anyway, that's a side note. But because of this masking that we learn to do, and because we grow up different, and all of the things that happen because we're different, and I will get into maybe my next episode, we'll talk about bullying and how that really affects the tender heart for the rest of their lives. That's a whole nother issue that we can get into, and I think that would be a good one. Because of all of that, we learn very young how to blend in the best we can and how to do what's acceptable or what's not. Or we try at least. Some tender hearts are better at masking than others. Some don't learn it and never are able to fit in. Some learn it well enough that we can kind of maybe fit in with a group as long as we're playing the part right. But there's always that feeling inside that if they really knew me, if they really showed all of me, I'd probably scare them away. And so you pick and choose. Like sometimes it's like, I really need to talk to this friend, so I'm going to do this. But then I'm going to pull away from them for the next 6 months just in case they thought I was too much. And that is the key word there that I didn't even realize was where my issue was, is that feeling of too much. When you're a tender heart and you're dealing with all of these big feelings, depression, anxiety, feeling like you don't belong, all of the things that you might be dealing with, it's a lot. And so when you reach out for help, oftentimes people that you reach out to get overwhelmed. And guess what? As an empath, you can kind of feel that. You can sense, oh, too much, back up. Okay, sorry, back up. And then you pull away. And then, then you feel deserted again because you tried to share, but it was too much for the person you tried to share with, or at least you felt it was. And again, it's all based on your own interpretations, your own feelings that may or may not have anything honestly to do with reality, but that's how it at least feels to you. I opened up, I shared with you, it was too much, now I'm going to pull back in. And maybe find someone else that I can open up and share a little bit with. Oh, and now I'm going to pull back in. I don't want to overwhelm people because if I do, then they push me away. So that is definitely an issue that I am struggling with right now, is learning how to open up more and be more honest, which is a really scary and difficult thing. And I never even realized how much this plays out in my life until I was in a situation where I really had to face how alone I feel. And I just want to point out, this doesn't mean I really am alone. It doesn't mean I don't have wonderful friends who support me and are there for me as best they can. It means that I have felt for so long in my life that I couldn't share, that even now it's too scary to do that. And so I don't even know at this point how much of feeling alone is my own fears that are holding me back. Maybe there are people now who could listen and could handle it. But for so long it was too much for those around me, and so I learned to hide it. So anyway, there's my personal issues with feeling alone. What I want you to take from this, if you are a tender heart, or if you care about a tender heart, is first of all, I think this is normal. I think when you are different, when your brain thinks different, it is quite normal for you to have trouble finding people that can understand it. I personally think that the internet, there's a lot of issues with it, but one of the wonderful things about the internet and social media and stuff is that people have been able to find like people. When you're living in a small community and you're the only one who thinks like you are, you can feel really alone. But when you reach out and find somebody else in another community who says, oh wait, I'm like that, oh I'm like that, and you can start making these connections, I think that, at least part of the internet and social media stuff, is a wonderful thing. It has brought people together that before felt like they were all alone in the world. And I think that's wonderful, and we need to continue creating those tribes, finding people that you can communicate with. Because once you do find the tribe, it does make a big difference. I feel like, at least to some extent, I have found a tribe. I have found people who get me and understand me, and it really makes a difference to be able to talk to someone and have them listen without feeling like you have to hide the important things, because maybe you won't be accepted if you show the truth. So if you are a tender heart, definitely reach out, do whatever you can to find your tribe, find people who understand you. Obviously, this community, you can respond to my comments, you can respond there. I haven't pushed it much, but I do have a Facebook group for the tenderhearted community. But obviously, that's only one little way. There are so many people out there that could relate to you. It's just a matter of finding them. And I do, as I said, think the good thing about social media and the internet is it's making it easier for us to find each other. So take advantage of those things. If you are the parent or a loved one of someone who is tenderhearted, understand that they may have trouble finding people that they can feel comfortable with. One of the things that you can do, if at all possible, is to help them feel like you are one of those people that they can be themselves with. Even the messy parts, even the parts when they're too emotional, when they're reverting to being a child because they can't handle it anymore, when they're being really honest and it's deep and it's scary and you think, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know how to handle these emotions. Imagine what they're going through with all of these emotions and let them talk. And I will do something to help you get off the hook. Okay. When anybody is reaching out to you because they're going through some things, 90% of the time, they are just wanting someone to listen and be there. You don't have to fix the problem. You don't have to solve it, but just listening makes a big difference. Now, what if you're listening and you get scared because they're sharing some deep stuff that is scary? For example, if they're dealing with depression and suicidal ideation and maybe even suicidal thoughts. I get it. That can be like, ooh, warning signs. You're not required to prevent them from doing anything, but definitely at that point, this is what I learned as a teacher, which I hold true to. If somebody tells me something, I will keep that secret, unless the two exceptions are if I'm afraid they might hurt themselves or someone else. If you are talking to a tender heart or anybody who shares something that makes you fear that they are going to hurt themselves or someone else, regardless of how they might feel, you do have the right to then reach out to somebody. Have them call 988. Help them find a therapist. Do something, obviously, in that case. So you don't have to just listen and be like, oh my God, what do I do? There are things that you can do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that they also need you to hear them and to know that regardless of these big, scary feelings, that you're there to listen and that you still love them and care about them regardless. Because what happens when we don't feel safe to share these things is we hold them in and we mask and we pretend everything is fine, even when it's not. And we learn very well how to do that, because a lot of life expects you to keep going regardless of how you feel. And we've learned how to do it very well, especially with anyone we don't feel it's safe to talk to. And what counts as safe? Someone who will listen, who will do their best to understand. We're not expecting you to understand for sure, unless you've gone through it yourself, right? But at least accepts it and acknowledges, man, that must be hard. I am here for you, and I love you, and I care about you regardless of that. And it's okay for you to share it with me. I can handle it. And again, side note, if you need to, call somebody, get some professional help, feel free. But also let them know that you can handle hearing it. And it's okay for them to share with you. Because if we don't feel safe to share, we won't. And that is not, I think, what you want. So yeah, so there's a nice, deep, emotional episode. It's part of probably why I was putting it off. But I think these are important things to discuss, and so here I am discussing them. And hopefully they helped. And again, if you have any thoughts, comments, whatever, please put them in the comment section. Please reach out to this community, to a community, to whoever you need to, because guess what? You are not too much. Even though for so long the world has told you that your emotions are too much. They are not. You just got to find the right people who can handle them. And I do believe there are people out there who can do that. So have a great week. I'll be back next week and we'll talk about bullying. So I was going to say maybe a more positive topic, but probably not. But that's okay. It's another important topic. So I think I'll plan on that for next week. Talk to you then.